Does anyone have a guess as to the highest grossing movie of 2018 domestically? The answer is Black Panther. See, my guess would have been Infinity War, but as it turns out, Infinity War was the number one in the worldwide box office and just barely came in number two domestically. So that wouldn't have been a terrible guess, but do you have a guess as to what number three is? It's The Incredibles 2. All three of these films were made by Disney. Isn't that crazy? Not just the top spot, the top three spots. I should mention they're also responsible for numbers 9, 12, 14, and 18 on the list. So you shouldn't be surprised to hear that in 2018 they had a higher market share than any other studio. It wasn't even close. More than a quarter of all the tickets sold at the box office were for Disney movies. Disney has been growing like crazy. Look at their revenue over the past 25 years. In 1993, they brought in $8.5 billion, and in 2018, that was up to $59 billion. That's 7 times higher, and I think this is a good time to look at their total assets as well, because they've been growing even faster. Disney is 8.4 times bigger today than they were 25 years ago, and they were pretty big 25 years ago. A huge portion of this growth can be attributed to them making some strategic acquisitions, the biggest of which was a $71 billion acquisition involving Fox that was finalized on March 20th, 2019. I know a second ago all of these graphs look like they had reached some crazy heights, but I can guarantee there's going to be a huge jump next year. I'll talk more about this latest acquisition in a little bit, but what I'd like to do first is talk about some of their more significant acquisitions over the past 25 years, starting with Miramax. In 1993, Disney bought the independent film company Miramax for $60 million and really helped turn them into something. Under their control, they made movies like Scream, Armageddon, Chicago, a Best Picture winner, No Country for Old Men, another Best Picture winner, some Quentin Tarantino movies. I guess you can say these were all technically Disney films. They let Miramax do their own thing, but they took in the money from them and they had final say in things. After owning it for 17 years, they decided to sell it in 2010. The collection of films they built up over that time helped make it much more valuable than when they bought it. They ended up selling it for $660 million. Then, in 1995, Disney spent $19 billion to acquire a company called Capital Cities. See, 10 years earlier, Capital Cities had bought the TV network ABC, who was already the majority owner of ESPN. So in this 1985 deal, control of both networks went to Capital Cities. Then in the 1995 deal, it all went to Disney. The deal also included significant interest in other cable channels, along with a bunch of various newspapers and magazines. So if you're ever wondering why they're giving away so many trips to Disneyland on America's Funniest Home Videos, or why there's so many Disney-themed weeks on Dancing with the Stars, it should all make sense now. Next up is Fox Family. That's another TV channel. There used to be a channel called Fox Family until Disney bought it in 2001 for $3 billion. They quickly renamed it to ABC Family, and as of early 2016, the name has been changed yet again to Freeform, but Disney still owns it. A few years later, in 2004, they bought the rights to The Muppets from Jim Henson's family. The amount wasn't disclosed, but the Henson family had bought the rights for $78 million about a year earlier, so it's likely to be somewhere in that range. The deal included the rights to use Kermit and Miss Piggy and all of those characters, but didn't include the rights to the Sesame Street gang. They have different owners. Following that, in 2006, they bought Pixar for the price of $7.4 billion. At that point, Pixar had yet to create anything considered even close to a failure. It was 6 great films: Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, with Cars on the way. They'd always worked closely together as far as financing and distribution, but here they decided to come together entirely. It was actually in a time when Disney was having a little trouble with their animated movies, so a deal like this would hopefully help things. And something interesting here, Steve Jobs was the majority owner of Pixar, so this deal made him Disney's largest stakeholder. Then, in 2009, they made an acquisition that people continue to talk about. This is a fun one. They bought Marvel for the price of $4 billion. The most attractive part of this deal, obviously, was the 5,000 characters that they would receive the rights to. Now, there were some major characters that Marvel had sold before the acquisition. Those include Spider-Man and all of the X-Men characters, the Fantastic Four. So they didn't get those, but they sure got a lot of good ones. And because of this, they've had the freedom to create an entire cinematic universe. In 2012, Disney paid $4 billion for Lucasfilm, which is the owner of the Star Wars franchise that was fully owned by Star Wars creator George Lucas. This deal made George Lucas the second largest shareholder of Disney, behind only the trust of the now deceased Steve Jobs. George Lucas had been the main guy behind the original trilogy and the prequels, all made under his ownership. But everything that's been made since the acquisition, starting with The Force Awakens, has not really involved George Lucas and has been made by Disney. That brings us to their most recent deal with Fox. In this one, they paid $71.3 billion. Just to help visualize how large that is, I put it on a graph next to all of the other acquisitions I talked about, and obviously nothing even comes close. And then, just for fun, I combined all the other acquisitions and put them on a graph. It's about half. This is by far the largest acquisition Disney has ever made, in a long line of large acquisitions. So let's talk about it. This has been a long time in the making. The simplified version is that in December of 2017, Disney put in a $52 billion bid. Then, 6 months later, Comcast came in with a $65 billion bid. Then, Disney quickly came back with this $71 billion bid. These are high amounts of money we're talking about. The bid was accepted, and the Department of Justice said that they would approve it with the exception of Fox's regional sports networks. Considering Disney already owns ESPN, I'd say that's fair. The result is that Fox would own and operate those sports networks, along with their news channel and the Fox network and some others, but they've essentially been reduced to simply being the owner of some TV channels. It's all spun off into its own new company. So here's what Disney gained. For one, remember this list of studio market shares I showed you in the beginning? Number 5 on that list was 20th Century Fox, which was just bought by Disney. Also, further down the list, at number 11, is Fox Searchlight, who was also bought by Disney. If next year is anything like last year, they'll be up to about 36%, and that's crazy. Not to mention the huge collection of previously made movies that they now own. And something that'll help them maintain these high sales is the fact that the deal also includes the X-Men and the Fantastic Four characters. So don't be surprised if you see some of them popping up in the MCU. The deal also includes some television networks, such as FX and the National Geographic, along with the rights to any characters owned by them and content produced by them in the past. Plus, Hulu. They already own 30% of it and just bought Fox's 30%, and if my math is right, that gives them a 60% stake, which is a majority stake. They've also expressed interest in acquiring an additional 10% from AT&T. Comcast owns the rest of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that transfer over sometime soon. And this brings me to what was likely the biggest motivation behind the deal. Streaming. Disney will continue to be completely dominant at the box office, but that might not be the best industry to dominate. In the US, digital home entertainment revenue has been exceeding movie ticket sales for some time, and as of 2018, that's now true on a global scale. Basically, fewer people are going out to the movies because they're choosing to stay home and watch Netflix instead. As I said, the deal gives them controlling interest in Hulu, but it's also providing them with content for Disney Plus, a subscription service they're planning to launch later this year. Do you realize just how much content they can put on there? Well, I guess you do, because I've been talking about it throughout this entire video. Plus, they have all these characters in their collection to create new stuff, all of which they plan to do. This could be bad for Netflix. I'm actually really excited to see what comes of it. In my final attempt to show you that Disney is bigger than you know, there's a lot more to this company that I failed to mention until now. As far as TV networks, in addition to all the ESPN and Disney channels, Freeform, ABC, and now FX and National Geographic, they also own a 50% share of A&E, History Channel, and Lifetime, along with some others that I've never heard of. And I have to mention this, theme parks. I'm sure you already know about these, but you may not appreciate their size. They have these things all over the world, and they generate revenue of over $20 billion per year, which is actually about twice as much as their entire movie business that we've been focusing on, and I think it's safe to say that the deal with Fox will be beneficial to this part of their business too. It gives them all these new characters they can incorporate and endless possibilities for attractions. Let me know in the comments, did you think Disney was this big? The obvious question here is, have they become too big? Even before the Fox deal, many people thought so, but now, holy cow, it's scary to think that they're becoming so powerful and controlling so much of our entertainment. But on the other hand, we could be getting some pretty cool entertainment out of this.